In 1913, inside a Honolulu cannery, the crown was one of the first things to disappear. Pineapples rolled forward beneath steel guides, their leaves cut away, their armored skins shaved off, their cores punched out in a blur. Fruit that had once crossed oceans as a royal trophy now emerged as identical yellow cylinders, ready for syrup, tin, and the American kitchen. The machine did not merely peel pineapple, it stripped away distance, season, and place. Until that moment, pineapple had resisted the modern world. It bruised easily, did not grow sweeter after harvest, and carried a shell that punished every knife. European nobles had built heated glasshouses just to grow one. Court painters placed it beside kings. Gardeners guarded it through winter nights. Yet in Hawaii, a fruit that was not Hawaiian would soon become the island's most powerful global image, planted across captured land, cut by immigrant labor, sealed into millions of cans, and sold as a taste of paradise. Today, pineapple sits in supermarket crates, fruit cups, pizza boxes, cocktails, candy, juice, and canned rings. Its crown is decorative, its price is ordinary, and its journey is invisible. But behind that familiar sweet acidity is a story about indigenous invention, imperial desire, botanical smuggling, royal theater, colonial textiles, American annexation, plantation hierarchy, industrial machinery, and a modern supply chain built to make every fruit look exactly the same. The central question is not simply how pineapple traveled, it is how a difficult South American plant became a crown worn by kings, then a brand worn by an entire island chain. And the story does not begin in Hawaii or in Europe or even inside that roaring cannery. It begins in tropical South America, where people transformed a wild, seedy plant into one of the strangest fruits humans have ever made. If you like stories where ordinary food turns into empire, trade, obsession, and hidden history, subscribe to Food Empire History. Now, to understand how pineapple became this powerful, we have to go back to where the story really begins. Long before Europeans gave it a name, indigenous communities in South America were selecting, carrying, planting, and reshaping pineapple. Its exact center of domestication remains debated. The strongest evidence points toward the tropical lowlands of South America, with important wild relatives across Brazil, Paraguay, the Guianas, and the wider Amazonian world. What is certain is that this fruit did not appear by accident. It was improved through generations of human attention. Wild relatives could be smaller, more fibrous, more heavily seeded, and less generous with sweetness. Growers favored plants with larger fruit, more juice, fewer seeds, and better flavor. They did not need packets of seed. Pineapple could be copied from living pieces, from shoots around the stem, slips beneath the fruit, or the leafy crown itself. A desirable plant could therefore be reproduced again and again, preserving the traits people valued. That biological trick made pineapple portable. A ripe fruit would rot on a long journey, but a crown could become another plant. A shoot carried along a river or forest trail could root in new soil. By the late 15th century, indigenous networks had already spread cultivated pineapple through much of tropical America and into the Caribbean. Europeans encountered a crop that had already crossed enormous distances before their ships arrived. The plant itself looks designed for defense. Its leaves form a spiked rosette close to the ground. Its skin is divided into hard, geometric eyes. Yet what we call one fruit is actually many fruits fused together. Each small section began as a separate flower and berry, joined around a central stalk until the entire cluster became one heavy body. Pineapple is not a single fruit in the ordinary sense. It is a community that has grown together so tightly that the boundaries disappear. It is also unusually efficient with water. Pineapple can open its pores at night, storing carbon for use during the day, which helps it survive heat and dry periods that punish thirstier crops. This did not make it effortless. A plant might take well over a year before producing a marketable fruit, and harvesting still meant working among sharp leaves close to the soil. but once established, it offered sweetness, liquid, fiber, and plant material that could travel. Indigenous peoples used pineapple as food, drink, medicine, and raw material. The flesh could be eaten fresh or processed. Fermented beverages turned sugar into something social and ceremonial. Leaves could provide fiber. The plant's protein-breaking enzymes, now grouped under the name bromelain, gave it another unusual power. Fresh pineapple can soften meat, sting the mouth, and prevent gelatin from setting because part of the fruit is actively breaking proteins apart. This combination made pineapple memorable before it became valuable. It was sweet but sharp, nourishing but aggressive, protected by armor yet crowned with leaves. Its indigenous names traveled with it. Much of the world still calls the fruit some version of ananas, a word carried from the languages of the Americas into global speech. English chose a different image. Europeans thought its patterned shell resembled a pine cone, once called a pineapple, and the comparison stuck. When European sailors met pineapple in the Caribbean during the late 15th century, they did not discover an untouched fruit. They entered an existing agricultural world. The fruit had been domesticated, moved, named, and given meaning by people who understood how to reproduce it. European accounts praised its flavor, but their deeper fascination came from what it represented. Pineapple was proof that the tropics contained pleasures Europe could not easily grow for itself. That difficulty created status. A pineapple arriving in Europe had survived heat, salt air, delay, rough handling, and rot. Most did not. A single fresh specimen could therefore embody an entire ocean voyage. It carried not only flavor, but the visible reach of ships, colonies, merchants, and monarchs. To place one before a ruler was to turn a fruit into a map of power. Spanish and Portuguese networks moved pineapple plants rapidly through the tropical world. Living crowns and shoots traveled toward West and East Africa, India, Southeast Asia, and Pacific Islands. By the late 16th century, the plant had reached the Philippines through the Spanish imperial system connecting the Americas with Asia. Pineapple had become one of the botanical passengers of early globalization. But the Philippines did not simply receive the plant. Filipino communities transformed it again. Artisans learned to scrape fine fibers from pineapple leaves, not the delicate strands, and weave them into piña, a translucent cloth that could look almost weightless. The work demanded patience, skill, and thousands of small hand movements. Women's weaving knowledge turned plantation waste into one of the most prized textiles of the colonial Philippines. By the 19th century, finely embroidered piña garments and handkerchiefs moved through elite Filipino society and into European and American collections. The fruit had crossed the Pacific as a crop and returned to imperial markets as fabric. Pineapple could now be eaten, worn, displayed, painted, and traded. Its crown was no longer only botanical. It had become social. In Europe, however, possession was still easier than cultivation. Tropical fruit could arrive by ship, but freshness was uncertain and supply irregular. The ultimate display of control was not importing a pineapple. It was forcing one to grow under a cold European sky. That required glass, fuel, manure, specialized structures, constant supervision, and a gardener who understood heat as carefully as soil. Dutch growers were among the first in Europe to fruit pineapples successfully in heated cultivation during the late 17th century. By the early 18th century, wealthy estates in Britain and France were building pineries and hothouses. Warm beds of fermenting manure or tanner's bark heated the roots. Stoves and flues protected the plants above. One mistake could waste years of labor. This was agriculture performed as theater. A country estate might burn fuel through winter, employ gardeners through the night, and maintain an artificial tropical climate for the sake of one fruit. The pineapple could then be carried into a dining room and placed at the center of the table, where its value came partly from not being ordinary enough to eat without ceremony. Guests saw the fruit and understood the message before anyone lifted a knife. A famous court painting shows the gardener John Rose presenting a pineapple to King Charles II. The image is often described as the first pineapple grown in England, although that claim is doubtful. The historical uncertainty almost strengthens the point. The painting was never only about horticulture. A kneeling gardener, a standing king, and a crowned fruit formed a carefully arranged hierarchy of labor, nature, and authority. Pineapple shapes spread onto ceramics, furniture, gateposts, silver, wallpaper, and architecture. Later generations would interpret the fruit as a symbol of hospitality. In its 18th century setting, it could also signal exclusion. A pineapple above a gate told visitors that the owner possessed land, heat, servants, and connections reaching into the colonial world. Welcome and warning could wear the same crown. The luxury was built on distance. European consumers admired the exotic fruit while rarely seeing the people and landscapes that made the trade possible. Pineapple was not yet a plantation giant on the scale of sugar, coffee, or cotton, and it would be misleading to give it their entire burden. But it traveled through the same imperial systems, shared their ships and ports, and gained value from a world in which tropical land and labor were increasingly organized for distant buyers. During the 19th century, faster ships and expanding imports began to weaken the pineapple's aristocratic power. More fruit reached European ports from the Caribbean and Atlantic islands. Prices fell. A symbol becomes less useful when too many people can buy it. The pineapple slowly descended from palace centerpiece toward commercial produce, but one problem remained. Fresh fruit was still perishable, irregular, and difficult to prepare. Canning changed the equation. Heat could stop decay, sugar syrup could stabilize flavor, and metal could carry tropical fruit far beyond its harvest season. Early canners in the Caribbean and North America proved that pineapple could survive in tins, yet preparation remained slow. Every fruit had to be topped, peeled, eyed, cored, sliced, trimmed, and packed. The shell that once protected the pineapple now blocked mass production. That obstacle would move the story to Hawaii, a place pineapple had reached as a foreign introduction. The Hawaiian name hala kahiki marked it as an outsider, a foreign hala. Pineapple was never an ancient foundation of native Hawaiian agriculture. Its eventual association with the islands would be manufactured through land, politics, technology, and advertising. Commercial experiments expanded in the late 19th century, just as Hawaii was being pulled into the economic and political orbit of the United States. American business interests had already transformed much of the islands through sugar. In 1893, a group backed by American power overthrew Queen Liliuokalani. The United States annexed Hawaii 5 years later. Pineapple did not cause that overthrow, but the new political order created conditions in which the industry could grow behind American tariff protection and direct access to mainland consumers. James Drummond Dole arrived shortly after annexation. He was related to Sanford Dole, a leader of the government that replaced the Hawaiian monarchy. In 1901, James formed the Hawaiian Pineapple Company and planted pineapple on Oahu. His advantage was not a secret tropical fruit, it was a system. Land, capital, tariff access, canning, shipping, research, and national advertising could be joined into one machine. Dole understood that supply alone would not create an empire. American consumers had to be taught what canned pineapple was and how to use it. Advertisements and recipe booklets placed the fruit into salads, cakes, punches, desserts, and domestic rituals. Hawaii was presented as sunshine in edible form. The can promised that a distant island could be opened at the dinner table. The marketing performed a remarkable substitution. A South American crop became Hawaiian. A colonized kingdom became paradise. Plantation fields became scenery. The can showed gold fruit, blue water, green leaves, and smiling abundance, while the political history that made the industry possible disappeared behind the label. Then came Henry Ginaca's machine. Dole hired the engineer in 1911 to solve the fruit's armored bottleneck. By 1913, the machine could rapidly remove the top and bottom, cut away the rind, punch out the core, and deliver a uniform cylinder for slicing. What had required many skilled knife movements became a continuous, industrial rhythm. Pineapple finally fit the factory. The effect went beyond speed. The machine rewarded uniform fruit. A pineapple too wide, narrow, bent, bruised, or irregular wasted flesh, or failed to pass cleanly through the cutting system. Agriculture began adjusting itself to metal. Fields, varieties, harvest timing, and grading increasingly served the dimensions of the can. The machine did not merely process nature, it told growers what nature was allowed to look like. Factories still needed people. In the fields, workers planted by hand, bent among sharp leaves, controlled weeds, and lifted heavy fruit. In the canneries, thousands of women and seasonal workers trimmed what machines missed, inspected slices, packed cans, and repeated the same motions through long shifts. The work could be tedious and exhausting even when the factories were celebrated as modern. Hawaii's wider plantation society was organized through racial and economic hierarchy. Workers arrived from Japan, China, Korea, the Philippines, Puerto Rico, Portugal, and elsewhere, joining native Hawaiians in an economy dominated by large commercial interests. Jobs and wages could be divided by ethnicity. Management remained largely white. Employers sometimes used differences between groups to weaken collective action. Yet plantation communities were not passive. Workers built families, churches, associations, food traditions, and labor movements. Cannery women remembered both the strain of the work and the friendships formed beside the production lines. Later, union organizing won stronger wages and protections. The people inside the pineapple system created a Hawaii far more complex than the tropical fantasy printed on the cans. The industry also remade entire landscapes. In 1922, Dole interests purchased most of Lanai and transformed huge areas into pineapple fields. Roads, housing, water systems, camps, warehouses, and shipping schedules were reorganized around one crop. The island became known as Pineapple Island, a name that made corporate agriculture sound natural, as though the land had always been waiting for rows of cloned fruit. For a time, Hawaii dominated the global canned pineapple trade. The crown that European nobles had guarded as a unique object now passed beneath factory blades by the thousands. Uniform rings appeared in lunchrooms, military kitchens, holiday hams, upside-down cakes, and gelatin salads. Pineapple had moved from spectacle to habit, and habit was more profitable than awe. But industrial success contains its own escape route. Once the machinery, varieties, chemistry, and management systems were understood, production no longer needed to remain in Hawaii. Companies could seek cheaper land and labor elsewhere. From the late 20th century, Hawaiian pineapple declined as processing shifted toward countries where costs were lower. Canneries closed, fields disappeared, and tourism replaced plantation agriculture as the dominant image of the islands. The fruit did not leave Hawaii completely. It remained in logos, souvenirs, roadside attractions, cocktails, shirts, hotel breakfasts, and the global imagination. Pineapple had become culturally Hawaiian at the exact moment mass production was moving away. The brand survived the industry that built it. A second transformation then changed the supermarket. Canned pineapple had conquered distance by cooking the fruit inside metal. Fresh pineapple required a different solution, one built from breeding, refrigeration, packing lines, shipping schedules, and shelf life. The crucial variety was MD2, developed through pineapple research connected to Hawaii and commercialized on a massive scale from Costa Rica during the 1990s. MD2 was sweeter, less acidic, visually golden, relatively uniform, and better suited to long-distance fresh trade than many earlier commercial types. It could endure the journey from tropical field to refrigerated ship, distribution center, and supermarket display, while still arriving attractive to consumers. The can had once standardized the slice. Now breeding and logistics standardized the whole fruit. Costa Rica became the dominant exporter of fresh pineapple to North American and European markets. Vast fields could be induced to flower on schedule, harvested according to color and sugar targets, washed, graded, labeled, chilled, and loaded into containers. A shopper thousands of miles away could buy tropical fruit in winter without thinking about the crop's long-growing cycle or narrow shipping window. That convenience has a cost. Large-scale pineapple monoculture can simplify landscapes, increase pressure on soil and water, and depend heavily on fertilizers, herbicides, pesticides, plastic, and carefully timed chemical treatments. International organizations and Costa Rican institutions have documented concerns involving water contamination, labor rights, land conversion, and the difficulty of balancing export income with environmental protection. The modern pineapple also reveals how power shifted from kings to specifications. The ruler is no longer a monarch standing beside a gardener. It is the combined demand of breeders, exporters, retailers, shipping companies, and consumers. Size must fit the box. Color must fit expectation. Sweetness must survive the voyage. The crown may remain on the fruit, but the supermarket decides whether the body beneath it is acceptable. Even flavor has become part of logistics. Pineapple does not improve after harvest in the way some fruits do. Once cut, its sugar level is largely fixed. That means the fruit must be mature enough to taste good, yet firm enough to withstand handling. The sweet spot is not only biological, it is commercial, calculated backward from the day a shopper might lift the fruit from a shelf. And still, pineapple resists complete control. Its sharp leaves slow workers. Its long-growing cycle ties up land. Its diseases and weather risks threaten uniform supply. Its enzymes can soften meat but ruin a gelatin dessert. Its fused berries produce a pattern no factory designed. Beneath every attempt at standardization, the fruit retains something strange. That strangeness may explain why pineapple has carried so many meanings. To indigenous growers, it was a plant worth selecting and moving. To European courts, it was tropical power made visible. To Filipino weavers, its leaves became threads of extraordinary delicacy. To American companies, it became a branded system of land, labor, machinery, and desire. To modern retailers, it is a calibrated object expected to arrive sweet, golden, and cheap. The next time you hold a pineapple, notice the contradiction in your hands. It wears a crown, but it was made ordinary by blades. It looks like one fruit, but it is many fruits fused together. It seems Hawaiian, but its oldest human story belongs to South America. It promises paradise, yet its modern price depends on hard work and tightly controlled landscapes far from the consumer. Cut through the shell and the fruit still performs its oldest trick. Separate pieces become one body. Indigenous knowledge, royal ambition, imperial shipping, Filipino craft, Hawaiian plantation history, immigrant labor, industrial engineering, Costa Rican fields, and supermarket logistics all meet inside the same spiral of golden flesh. The pineapple's crown has never belonged to one king, country, or company for long. Power kept lifting it from one world and placing it on another. What began as a carefully domesticated American crop became a European trophy, a Pacific industry, and finally a global habit. The fruit survived every transformation, but each transformation changed who controlled it, who profited from it, and who remained hidden behind its sweetness. So when the knife removes the crown, it repeats the action that opened the modern pineapple age inside that Honolulu cannery. The difference is that now you can see what the machine concealed. This is not simply tropical fruit, it is a history of how humans turn rarity into status, status into industry, industry into identity, and identity into something cheap enough to forget. If this story changed the way you see pineapple, subscribe for more hidden food histories.